Welcome to another deep dive, where
Right.
today we're taking you on a journey through the complex legal landscape of parental rights in the U.S.
Okay.
You've brought us two court cases, both involving parents navigating the federal court system in their fight for their children.
Right.
And you know what they say about federal court right?
Yeah.
It's not exactly known for being a quick and easy process.
No, not at all.
So let's dive into our first case. Marco A. Montemayor v. Dallas County Child Protective Services. This case really throws into question when and how federal courts should get involved in custody disputes, which, as you know, usually play out in state courts.
Right. And this case is particularly interesting because Montemayor is using a legal tool typically associated with challenging prison sentences, a writ of habeas corpus.
Okay, so habeas corpus, isn't that when you're saying you're being unlawfully detained?
Mm.
How does that apply to a custody battle?
Exactly. Montemayor is arguing that by keeping him from his children, Dallas County CPS is essentially holding them unlawfully, denying him his fundamental right to parent them. He's saying this state agency is acting outside of its authority.
Wow, so he's essentially taking on the entire Child Protective Services system.
That's right.
I imagine that takes some guts.
Yeah.
But I'm still a little fuzzy on the legal grounds here. What specific rights does he claim are being violated?
That's a really important question, and it gets to the heart of his argument. He's relying on the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment, which guarantees every citizen fundamental fairness and protection from government overreach. He claims that CPS, as an arm of the state, hasn't given him due process in their handling of his case.
That makes sense, but wouldn't that open the floodgates? Could any parent who loses custody in family court just turn around and file a habeas corpus petition in federal court?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it gets to why this case is so significant. Federal courts have historically been extremely hesitant to interfere in state family court matters. They generally believe these issues are best handled at the state level. But Montemayor's case could set a precedent, potentially giving parents a new avenue to challenge CPS decisions in federal court.
So it sounds like we're talking about a delicate balancing act here. On one hand, you have the rights of parents, and on the other, the state's interest in protecting children.
Exactly, and the courts are constantly grappling with where to draw the line. This case could have major implications for how parental rights are interpreted and enforced at the federal level.
This is where it gets really interesting, right? What happens next in this case could potentially reshape the legal landscape for custody battles across the country. It's fascinating to see how this one case could reshape the legal landscape around parental rights. And speaking of navigating the complexities of parental rights, our second case throws another log on the fire this time, with the added layer of incarceration. Bonnie J. Vosburgh and Jaden J. Diakison v. Jason and Jacqueline Berger really highlights the challenges faced by parents who are incarcerated.
Yeah, this case brings to light the intersection of parental rights, the child welfare system, and the criminal justice system.
And we should clarify here that Vosburgh isn't seeking custody of her son Josiah while she's in prison, right?
Right.
This case is about something else entirely.
Exactly.
So let's break this down. Vosburgh is challenging the adoption, claiming the Bergers are unfit guardians. We know she cites a broken leg Josiah suffered while in their care. But what are the legal grounds for her to even challenge the adoption? Wouldn't being incarcerated make that incredibly difficult?
Yeah, that's the crux of the issue, and it underscores the legal distinction between custody and parental rights that we touched on earlier. Remember, losing custody doesn't automatically terminate parental rights. Vosburgh is arguing that she retains her parental rights even while incarcerated, and therefore she has legal standing to challenge the adoption.
So in essence, she's saying that her rights as a parent are being infringed upon by this adoption proceeding, and she's using the courts to fight for those rights.
Precisely. And this case raises some really important questions about how we as a society view the rights of incarcerated parents. There's a delicate balance between protecting children and ensuring that parents, regardless of their circumstances, have a voice in their children's lives.
It's a tough situation and unfortunately not an uncommon one. Do we know how often incarcerated parents face these kinds of obstacles in maintaining relationships and legal rights concerning their children?
Sadly, it's far too common. Studies have shown that over half of incarcerated parents lose contact with their children while they are behind bars, and many face significant barriers to regaining custody or even just having regular visitation upon their release.
It makes you wonder, what kind of impact does this separation have on both the parents and the children involved?
It's a heartbreaking reality, and the consequences can be devastating and long-lasting. Children with incarcerated parents are more likely to experience poverty, instability, and emotional difficulties. And for the parents, the loss of contact and the struggle to maintain their parental role can be incredibly painful and isolating.
It really highlights the ripple effects of incarceration, not just on the individuals involved, but on families and communities as a whole. These cases are really tough to hear about, but they force us to confront some important questions about parental rights, the role of the state, and how these sometimes competing interests intersect.
Right.
In both cases, we see parents challenging the state's authority, whether it's CPS or the family court system. It makes you wonder, when should the government be allowed to intervene in family matters, especially when it comes to something as fundamental as parental rights?
That's the million-dollar question, and there's no easy answer. We as a society place a high value on parental rights, recognizing the unique bond between a parent and a child.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we also recognize that the state has a compelling interest in protecting children from harm. Balancing those two interests is incredibly complex, and these cases highlight just how difficult it can be to draw that line.
It seems like we're constantly trying to find that balance, and it's often a moving target. But one thing these cases really underscore is the power of the federal court system.
Right.
I mean, think about it. We're talking about individual parents taking on powerful state agencies and even challenging the outcomes of state-level family courts.
Yeah, really incredible stories.
So what does this all mean for our listeners? What are the key takeaways from these deep dives into parental rights and the federal court system?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway is that parental rights, while considered fundamental, are not absolute. They exist within a complex legal framework that often varies from state to state.
Okay.
And as we've seen in these cases, navigating that framework, especially at the federal level, can be incredibly challenging, particularly for those who are already marginalized or disadvantaged, like incarcerated parents.
It's a reminder that the legal system, for all its complexities, can be a powerful tool for change. But it also underscores the need for greater awareness and understanding of these issues so that individuals can effectively advocate for themselves and their families.
I agree with that.
We've only scratched the surface of these complex and often heartbreaking issues today, but hopefully this deep dive is giving you a better understanding of the legal landscape surrounding parental rights and the role of the federal court system. And as always, we encourage you to keep asking questions, keep learning, and keep the conversation going.